This is Dreamtime Science, where we paint the canvas of your dreams with the soft brushstrokes of scientific wonder. Together we'll explore the mysteries that dance at the edge of consciousness. You know what's fascinating? I've been thinking about how animals seem to find their way across vast distances, almost like they carry an invisible map inside them. There's something remarkable about how creatures, from tiny birds to sea turtles, can sense Earth's magnetic field and use it to navigate. It's like a quiet superpower hidden in nature, and I can't wait to share how it all works with you tonight. If this peaceful blend of science and serenity helps ease your evening, consider joining our community of gentle learners. Share your favorite moment of scientific awe in the comments. Let's prepare for tonight's journey. Find your most comfortable position, let tension float away from your body, and take 3 slow, peaceful breaths. In the hush before sleep, when shadows swirl and the world outside your window softens into velvet, let us drift into a story woven from the secret currents of the earth itself. Imagine, if you will, a world not only seen with eyes, but felt with senses more subtle, where invisible forces swirl through the air and beneath the ground, guiding creatures with a wisdom older than memory. Tonight, our journey begins with the magnetic heart of the beasts and the silent compass that pulses within their living forms. For as long as there have been stories, humanity has gazed at the uncanny feats of animals and wondered if they were privy to secrets we have lost. The salmon returning unerringly from the vastness of the ocean to the cold stream of their birth. The monarch butterfly, fragile and wayfaring, fluttering thousands of kilometers to a patch of forest its ancestors once called home. The homing pigeon, released blindfolded and far from its loft, wheeling through sky and wind and finding its way back with a persistence that borders on the miraculous. Long before science gave us words for these phenomena, they were the stuff of myth and legend, a poetry of movement inscribed across the continents, suggesting that perhaps the wild things moved not at random, but by the pull of some invisible thread. The ancients, watching the migration of birds across autumn skies, or the mysterious arrivals of whales along distant shores, spun tales to make sense of these marvels. In Norse myth, the raven was a messenger for Odin, its path guided by the gods. In the tales of Polynesian navigators, birds were trusted guides to land, their departures and arrivals signposts across the uncertain ocean. Some cultures believed certain animals possessed an inner knowing, a kind of supernatural orientation gifted by the spirits or the stars. Even as the compass needle was discovered and the secrets of magnetism teased from lodestones, the notion persisted that animals, in their quiet wisdom, could sense the world in ways we could not. And in the age of science fiction, this fascination was reborn in new forms. Think of Magneto, that brooding figure from the pages of X-Men comics, who could bend metal and conjure force fields with the power of his mind, his very name a tribute to the ancient mysteries of magnetism. Magneto's power was imagined as the ultimate mastery of invisible forces, a reminder that the world is alive with currents and fields that lie just beyond the reach of our ordinary senses. In him, as in the animal navigators of the wild, we sense the allure of a hidden order, a secret code that could unlock the map of the world. But what is this force, this magnetic whisper that seems to call to the beasts as they journey across land and sea? The answer lies deep beneath our feet, in the molten heart of the planet. The Earth is not only a world of rock and water, but a vast dynamo, its solid iron core wrapped in a shell of molten metal that churns and spins. From this restless motion arises an immense magnetic field, stretching out from the poles, encircling the planet in invisible lines of force, To our everyday senses, this field is a silent companion, present but unnoticed. Yet to the creatures who have tuned themselves to its song, it is a map written across the world, a compass needle that always points the way. The concept of geomagnetic navigation, of animals using the Earth's magnetic field to guide their journeys, might sound like the stuff of fantasy, but it is one of the most remarkable discoveries of modern biology. It was not always so. For centuries, the feats of migratory animals were attributed to instinct, to scent, to the stars themselves. The idea that a robin or a sea turtle might be reading the planet's magnetic field as a sailor reads a chart seemed almost unthinkable. Yet, bit by bit, the evidence emerged, strange, tantalizing, and ultimately persuasive. Consider the homing pigeon, beloved of both scientists and romantics, whose abilities have puzzled and delighted for centuries. These birds, once central to the communication networks of empires, can be taken hundreds of kilometers from their home, released into the unknown, and still find their way back with astonishing accuracy. Early experiments tried to explain this in terms of sight, smell, or memory. Yet as researchers began to manipulate the magnetic environment around these birds, attaching small magnets to their heads or shielding them from the Earth's field, something curious happened. The pigeons' sense of direction faltered, their flights grew erratic. It was as if a vital thread had been severed. Here was a clue. The birds, somehow, could sense the magnetic field and relied upon it to navigate their journeys. This capacity is not limited to pigeons alone. Across the animal kingdom, from the smallest insects to the largest mammals, the evidence for magnetic navigation has grown steadily, like a constellation of clues scattered across decades of careful observation. Loggerhead turtles, hatching on a beach in Florida, crawl toward the ocean and begin a migration that will take them thousands of kilometers across the open sea. Along the way, they pass through regions where the Earth's magnetic field changes subtly, its strength, its inclination, its polarity. Yet the turtles, guided by senses we are only beginning to fathom, adjust their course, compensating for currents and storms, and years later return unerringly to the very stretch of sand where their lives began. Salmon, too, return from the ocean to the rivers of their birth, traversing immense distances with a precision that defies easy explanation. Studies have shown that they respond to changes in the magnetic field, using it as a kind of map, a memory etched in the language of flux and inclination. Even in the dark, even in the depths, the magnetic field is a constant presence, a lodestar for their journey. And then there are the birds. Each autumn and spring, the skies are filled with the wing beats of migrants, traveling sometimes from the Arctic to the tip of South America, or from the forests of Siberia to the plains of Africa. These journeys are feats of endurance, but also of navigation, traversing continents, seas and deserts, often at night, beneath the cover of stars. For a long time, scientists believed that birds navigated by the sun and the stars alone. But ingenious experiments with robins, warblers and thrushes have revealed something more. In the absence of visual cues, in complete darkness, these birds can still orient themselves according to the magnetic field. Some even appear to see the field itself, perceiving it as a faint visual overlay, a spectral pattern superimposed upon the world. To imagine the world as these creatures do is to step into a hidden dimension, a world alive with invisible rivers and lines, where north and south are not abstractions, but physical sensations, felt in beak and bone. It is to realize that the great migrations, the ancient wanderings, are not merely acts of instinct, but of perception, an ongoing conversation between life and the living earth. How then do animals sense this field that is invisible to us? The answers are as varied as the creatures themselves, and the story is far from complete. In some species, tiny crystals of magnetite, a naturally magnetic mineral, have been found within the tissues of the beak or brain. These microscopic compasses may twitch in response to the field, sending signals to the animal's nervous system. In others, the process seems to involve specialized proteins in the eye, which react to the direction of the magnetic field and may allow the animal to see the lines of force as patterns of light or color. Some researchers believe there are still other mechanisms, as yet undiscovered, waiting to be revealed. It is a reminder that the senses are not fixed, but are shaped by the needs and histories of the creatures who possess them. The world as we know it, with its familiar colors, sounds and textures, is only one version of reality. For the magnetically sensitive, the world is richer, layered, alive with signals that we, for the most part, can only imagine. Perhaps this is why these abilities have long seemed magical to us, a gift from realms just beyond our reach. The idea of animals as natural navigators has seeped deep into human culture, coloring our myths and our science fiction alike. In the tales of ancient mariners, birds were omens and guides, their flight a sign of land beyond the horizon. In modern times, our admiration for these feats has inspired everything from the design of navigation systems to the whimsical inventions of comic book heroes. Magneto's power to control the magnetic field is a fantastical exaggeration, but it speaks to a real wonder that there are forces all around us shaping the course of life in ways both dramatic and subtle. And so, as night deepens and the world grows still, let us linger for a moment in the company of these magnetic wanderers. Picture the robin, poised on a wire at dusk, feeling the gentle tug of north beneath its feet. Picture the sea turtle, gliding through moonlit waters, the magnetic map of the ocean inscribed in its bones. Picture the pigeon, released into the boundless sky, turning homeward on invisible rails drawn by the earth itself. In the quiet of these moments, we glimpse the depth and strangeness of the natural world, a world where the very ground beneath us hums with hidden currents, and where the hearts of animals are tuned to the ancient pulse of the planet. It is a world both familiar and mysterious, woven from threads of science and story, where the line between fact and wonder is thin as the whisper of magnetic force itself. And so, as you settle deeper into the hush of the night, consider this. The animals who share our world move through it with senses and abilities that might, in some future age, seem as marvelous as any superpower. What might it be like to sense the Earth's field as a tangible guide? What secrets still lie hidden in the living compass of the beasts? Our journey is only beginning. Ahead, the path winds further, from the marvels of migration to the mysteries of how these senses work, and the experiments that have revealed them. But for now, let your mind drift with the currents and listen for the quiet song of the earth, calling across the darkness, guiding home the wanderers of field and sky. Beneath the familiar hush of nightfall, as the last light drains from the horizon and the world slips into indigo, there is a pulse that goes unnoticed by most. Not the thrum of blood in our own veins, nor the soft respiration of sleeping creatures, but something older, more pervasive, a silent orchestra of forces, shaping the voyage of life itself on this planet. Tonight we will follow these invisible threads, drifting through the hidden geometry of the Earth's magnetic field, and attempt to peer through the eyes, or perhaps the minds, of the animals who are said to sense it. The Earth itself hums with a secret. Deep beneath the crust, vast rivers of molten iron swirl and churn in the outer core, their motion driven by the planet's slow cooling and the restless turning of its axis. This restless, molten ballet gives birth to something extraordinary, a planetary-scale magnetic field unfurling outward from the poles, encircling us all in lines of force that arc and dip, stretch and bend like taut, unseen harp strings. From pole to pole, this geomagnetic field envelops our world, a faint but persistent guardian, shielding us from the sun's fierce wind of charged particles and cosmic radiation. Yet for all its significance, this field is invisible to our senses. No human eye can glimpse its lines, no ear can hear its song. We walk through it as we walk through the air, unknowing, untouched. Only with the aid of instruments, compasses, magnetometers, satellites, can we make it known to us, trace its contours, and measure its subtle changes. For most of history, even these tools were absent, and the field's existence was nothing more than a rumour, a whisper in the behaviour of lodestones and the trembling needles of navigators. But for some creatures it seems the story is different. Let us leave our vantage point in the human realm and descend into the world of the migratory animal. Picture the Arctic tern, whose yearly journey draws a looping arc from the edge of the world near Greenland all the way to the frigid waters of Antarctica and back again, a round trip of tens of thousands of kilometers through storms and endless seascapes, across unfamiliar continents and the trackless blue desert of the open ocean. Or the monarch butterfly, fragile yet resolute, setting forth on a migration from the forests of Canada to the mountain sanctuaries of central Mexico, guided by some mysterious compass across a continent's breadth. How do they find their way? How does a creature, no larger than your palm, traverse such distances with uncanny precision, often to a place it has never seen before? For centuries, this question has stirred both wonder and speculation. Early observers, lacking our scientific vocabulary, spoke of instinct or even the guidance of a divine hand. In time, as the compass became a tool of the explorer, the idea arose that perhaps animals too possess their own invisible compass, a way of sensing the magnetic field that threads through everything. The evidence, though often subtle, is compelling. In laboratory experiments, robins and other migratory birds, when placed in cages surrounded by coils generating artificial magnetic fields, will alter their orientation in response to the new magnetic cues, seemingly attempting to align themselves with the north, dictated by the field, not by any visible landmark or scent. Sea turtles, hatched on distant shores and swept far out to sea, will later return to the very beach of their birth, as if following a path inscribed not on the earth but in the ether. Yet, as we peer closer, the picture grows more intricate and more elusive. The notion that animals possess an innate GPS, a built-in, infallible navigation system guided solely by magnetism, is a myth born perhaps of our own technological dreams. The reality is far subtler and more enigmatic. For one, the Earth's magnetic field is not a uniform force. It varies in strength and direction from place to place, and shifts over time as the molten core roils beneath us. The field inclines steeply near the poles and lies flatter near the equator. Its intensity waxes and wanes, its lines meander, twisted by geological structures and even disrupted by solar storms. Any animal relying solely on this shifting landscape would find itself subject to confusion or even peril if the field changed unexpectedly. Moreover, the way that animals might sense this field remains largely a mystery. Unlike light, which is detected by eyes tuned to specific wavelengths, or sound perceived by ears designed to vibrate in response to pressure waves, magnetism has no obvious receptor in the bodies of most organisms. The quest to uncover the biological basis of magnetoreception, the ability to sense magnetic fields, has led researchers down winding paths, each discovery opening new questions. One leading theory proposes that certain animals possess tiny crystals of magnetite, a naturally magnetic mineral embedded within their tissues. These microscopic compass needles, it is thought, could align with the Earth's field and exert a subtle force on nearby nerve cells, providing a signal to the animal's brain about the direction of north and south. Traces of magnetite have indeed been found in the heads of some birds, in the beaks of trout, in the abdomens of honeybees. The evidence, though intriguing, is not always consistent. Sometimes the crystals appear in species that show no navigational prowess or in locations seemingly disconnected from the nervous system. Another hypothesis, stranger still, invokes the quantum realm. It suggests that in the eyes of some animals, a light-sensitive molecule called cryptochrome may act as a sort of magnetic sensor. When struck by photons, cryptochrome undergoes a chemical change, producing pairs of electrons whose quantum spins are subtly influenced by the surrounding magnetic field. This, in turn, could alter the animal's vision, perhaps overlaying a faint shifting pattern on the otherwise invisible field lines, a spectral compass seen only by those who know how to look. Experiments have hinted that robins and other birds become disoriented when exposed to certain wavelengths of light, or when their cryptochrome genes are disrupted, suggesting that their ability to sense direction depends not just on magnetism, but on the interplay of light and quantum chemistry in the eye. Yet, as with magnetite, the details are maddeningly elusive. No one has yet seen a bird see the magnetic field. We are left with behavioral cues and the faint indirect signatures of molecular change. There are still other theories. Some researchers suggest that animals might sense the field through electrical induction, tiny currents generated in nerve cells as they move through the Earth's magnetic environment. Others speculate about entirely unknown mechanisms, perhaps involving structures or processes yet undiscovered. Each proposal is a thread woven into the tapestry of our ignorance, shimmering with possibility. What is clear is that no animal relies solely on magnetism for navigation. The myth of the animal GPS, a single, all-knowing system, is a simplification born of human invention. Instead, creatures appear to weave together a patchwork of cues, magnetic, visual, olfactory, even the memory of landforms and the taste of distant waters. A migrating bird may calibrate its magnetic sense with the position of the sun at dawn and dusk, or with the pattern of stars wheeling overhead. A turtle in the open sea may blend the faint tug of the geomagnetic field with the swirling scent of coastline, the temperature of currents, the pressure of waves. Our own tools, so precise and digital, have perhaps dulled our appreciation for the art of natural navigation. We imagine the world as a grid, a map of coordinates and waypoints, forgetting that the real world is a shifting, living mosaic where certainty is rare and adaptation is everything. For the animals who cross oceans and continents, navigation is not the simple reading of a dial, but a constant dance with uncertainty, a negotiation between instinct, memory, and the shifting signals of an ever-changing world. And so, the deeper we look, the more we realize the limits of our understanding. Despite decades of research, despite the cleverness of our experiments and the power of our instruments, the secret of magnetoreception remains just out of reach, a riddle whispered on the wind. We can observe the consequences, birds orienting at night, turtles returning home, bees foraging with uncanny efficiency. But the inner experience, the way the world feels to these creatures, remains hidden from us. There is a humility here, a reminder that science, for all its triumphs, is always a work in progress. The invisible threads of nature are not easily untangled. They defy our categories, evade our expectations. We are left with partial glimpses, tantalizing hints, and the knowledge that for now some mysteries endure. But perhaps there is a kind of beauty in this, a poetry in the limits of our sight. To imagine the world as woven not just from matter and energy, but from forces that touch us without our knowing. To think that, somewhere in the dark, a bird might be following a path we cannot see, guided by a sense we cannot fathom. The world grows larger, stranger, more filled with wonder. The myth, then, is not that animals possess a perfect GPS, an infallible instrument. Rather, it is that the world can be reduced to what we can measure, to what we can name. The truth, as ever, is more subtle, a landscape of signals and senses, where the lines between the known and the unknown blur, and every journey is a leap into the dark. As you lie here listening, Let your mind drift outward, tracing those invisible lines that lace the earth. Picture them as rivers of force, flowing from pole to pole, circling through the sky and burrowing under the sea. Somewhere far above or far below, a creature is feeling their tug, steering by their gentle pull, writing its own story on the currents of the air or the rolling waves. What do they sense in that hidden dimension? What worlds unfold for them just beyond our sight? The night is full of questions, and the field is never still. Tomorrow the sun will rise, and the world will turn again, the molten core churning, the lines of force reshaping themselves ever so slightly. The animals will move, and we will watch, and the mystery will endure. And in the quiet spaces between what is known and what is guessed, we will continue to search, to wonder, to listen for the silent music that guides all living things. For there are more secrets still, buried in the dark, waiting for the patient hand and the curious mind to draw them forth. In the gentle hush of a laboratory at dawn, a group of scientists gathers around a small sleeping bird, a white-throated sparrow, its feathers ruffled just so, its tiny heart beating in the stillness. They work quickly and quietly, fastening a minuscule device to the bird's slender back. This device, no heavier than a paperclip, is a marvel of human ingenuity, a GPS transmitter engineered to record the journey this sparrow will soon undertake, a journey that may span continents and test the limits of endurance and navigation. Here, at the intersection of biology and technology, the story of decoding nature's compass truly unfolds. The quest to understand how animals sense and respond to the Earth's magnetic field is a tapestry woven from centuries of wonder, ingenious experimentation, and careful observation. The tools scientists use are as varied as the travelers they study, from the precise humming machinery of modern laboratories to the makeshift cages and simple compasses of earlier times. Let us move for a moment to the late 18th century, when the world was still largely unexplored, and the mysteries of animal migration were the stuff of rumour and speculation. The philosopher and naturalist Jean-André Deluc, peering through the fog of limited technology, wondered aloud whether birds might possess an internal compass, some hidden faculty that guided their migrations. This was an age before radio, before satellite tracking, when the only way to test such a notion was to watch, to wait, and to wonder. The earliest and most elegant of experiments began not with machines, but with cages. In the 1950s, German ornithologist Gustav Kramer devised a simple yet profound test. He placed migratory birds in circular cages, each lined with an ink pad on the floor and a paper collar around the edge. The birds, restless as migration season approached, would hop repeatedly in the direction they wished to fly, leaving a telltale arc of footprints on the paper. By carefully rotating the cages, altering the position of the sun, and even simulating the patterns of daylight, Kramer demonstrated that birds did not simply fly south by instinct or memory. Instead, they oriented themselves by celestial cues, sun and stars, and perhaps something more elusive, the silent, invisible lines of Earth's magnetic field. As decades passed and technology advanced, the scope of these investigations expanded. The development of radio transmitters in the mid-20th century allowed researchers to follow animals beyond the confines of observation towers or garden aviaries. The first transmitters were crude, their batteries heavy, and their range limited. Yet for the first time, scientists could track the path of a bird not just across a room, but across a continent. In one of the first such studies, European robins were fitted with tiny radio transmitters and released into the wild. Ground teams armed with directional antennas followed the faint signals, tracing the birds' progress as they journeyed south for the winter. These early forays revealed not only the astonishing distances travelled, but also the precision with which birds returned year after year to the same breeding grounds, sometimes to the very same branch. The implication was clear. Birds possessed not merely a generalized sense of direction, but a navigational toolkit of exquisite sensitivity. Yet radio tracking had its limits. The signals faded with distance, and the birds often vanished beyond the reach of the antennas. The dream of following a single animal across oceans and continents remained tantalizingly out of reach until the dawn of satellite tracking and the miniaturization of GPS technology. In the early 2000s, researchers began to affix GPS loggers to larger birds, albatrosses, storks, eagles. The devices, powered by tiny solar panels, recorded precise positions at regular intervals, storing the data until the bird returned to its nesting site, when the logger could be retrieved and its secrets revealed. Now, for the first time, migration routes appeared not as a series of dots and guesses, but as winding, intricate paths sprawled across virtual maps. The Arctic tern's pole-to-pole journey, the looping wanderings of the bar-tailed godwit, the high-altitude crossings of the steppe eagle, all were laid bare. But the question of how remained. How did these animals, flying blind through cloud and night, sense the magnetic threads that stitched the world together? To probe deeper, scientists needed to look within, not at the routes themselves, but at the bodies and minds of the travelers. For some creatures, the answer lay in the most unlikely of places. Deep in the mud of a freshwater pond, a single-celled bacterium twists and tumbles, propelled by its whip-like flagella. To the naked eye, the bacterium is unremarkable. But through the lens of an electron microscope, a hidden architecture emerges, chains of iron oxide crystals, perfectly aligned like the bar magnets of a child's science kit. These are magnetosomes, and the bacterium is magnetotactic, literally able to sense and respond to the Earth's magnetic field. The discovery of magnetotactic bacteria in the 1970s was a revelation. Here, at the base of the tree of life, was a living compass, a simple organism with a built-in magnetic sensor. Scientists soon learned that these magnetosomes acted as tiny compass needles, allowing the bacterium to orient itself and swim along magnetic field lines, seeking the low-oxygen mud it preferred. The implication was profound. If such a mechanism existed in bacteria, might not more complex creatures have evolved similar tools? The hunt for biological compasses in animals took on new urgency. In birds, the search focused on the beak and the brain. Microscopic examination of the upper beak of pigeons and robins revealed clusters of cells containing tiny crystals of magnetite, an iron oxide mineral known for its magnetic properties. These magnetite particles, arranged in chains or clusters, could theoretically act as biological sensors, tugged ever so gently by the Earth's field. To test this idea, researchers devised clever experiments. They glued small magnets to the beaks of pigeons and released them far from home. The results were striking. Birds with magnets attached often circled aimlessly, unable to find their way, while those with non-magnetic brass weights navigated without difficulty. In another approach, scientists anesthetized the nerves leading from the beak to the brain, disrupting the presumed magnetic sense. Again, the bird's homing abilities faltered. The evidence mounted. Somewhere in the beak, a magnetic sense resided. Yet, as is often the case in science, each answer spawned new questions. Subsequent studies cast doubt on some of these findings, suggesting that the magnetite particles might belong to immune cells rather than to dedicated sensory cells. The trail grew murkier, the lines of evidence tangling like roots beneath the forest floor. In response, researchers turned to the brain itself, searching for regions that responded to changes in magnetic fields. In the 2000s, neuroscientists used a technique called functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, to peer into the brains of pigeons exposed to shifting magnetic fields. Certain regions of the brain lit up in response, suggesting an ability to detect and process magnetic information. But the true nature of this sense, was it a physical tug on magnetic crystals or an entirely different mechanism, remained elusive. Meanwhile, in the world of chemistry and quantum physics, a parallel story was unfolding. Some scientists proposed that animals might detect magnetic fields not through iron crystals, but via a kind of molecular alchemy, a radical pair mechanism occurring in specialized light-sensitive proteins. In the eyes of migratory birds, a protein called cryptochrome absorbs blue light, triggering a cascade of chemical changes. The resulting pair of electrons, each with its own quantum spin, is exquisitely sensitive to magnetic fields. In theory, the orientation of these electron pairs could influence the bird's vision, overlaying a faint pattern or shadow that reveals the direction of north. Testing this hypothesis required a fusion of disciplines: genetics, molecular biology, behavioral science, and physics. Researchers bred birds with mutations in their cryptochrome genes and observed their behavior in magnetic orientation tests. In some cases, birds lacking functional cryptochrome failed to orient properly under blue light, suggesting that this quantum mechanism played a role. To explore further, scientists built elaborate, shielded chambers, rooms lined with coils of copper wire, capable of generating or cancelling out magnetic fields at will. Inside these chambers, birds were tested under different wavelengths of light, with or without access to celestial cues. The results were tantalizing. Under certain conditions, birds could orient themselves using only the magnetic field, and their ability to do so depended on the presence of blue or green light. The tools used in these experiments are themselves a testament to human curiosity and creativity. Helmholtz coils, named for the 19th century physicist Hermann von Helmholtz, create uniform magnetic fields within a laboratory space, allowing scientists to manipulate the environment with exquisite precision. Squid magnetometers, superconducting quantum interference devices, can detect the faintest whispers of magnetic fields, even those produced by the firing of neurons in a bird's brain. Electron paramagnetic resonance spectroscopy can peer inside proteins, revealing the quantum dance of electrons at the heart of the cryptochrome hypothesis. Beyond the laboratory, the field biologist's toolkit has grown ever more sophisticated. Lightweight GPS tags, some now weighing less than a gram, can be attached to the smallest of warblers. Geolocators, which record ambient light levels, allow researchers to infer latitude and longitude based on day length and sunrise time, even when satellites are out of reach. Accelerometers and heart rate monitors record the physical exertion of flight, while tiny video cameras offer a bird's-eye view of the landscape below. Each advance brings new insights and new puzzles. In one remarkable study, scientists tracked the migration of Eurasian reed warblers from their breeding grounds in Europe to their wintering sites in sub-Saharan Africa. The birds were captured, fitted with geolocators, and released. When they returned the following year, the data revealed not just a simple north-south journey, but complex detours, leaps across deserts, and stopovers in unexpected places. The warblers seemed to navigate not just by instinct or habit, but by integrating multiple sources of information: stars, sun, landmarks, and always the invisible compass of the Earth's magnetic field. The quest to understand nature's compass is not limited to birds. Loggerhead turtles, born on the beaches of Florida, crawl seaward and vanish into the Atlantic. Years later, they return, often to the very beach where they were born. Experiments with hatchlings in tanks fitted with electromagnetic coils have shown that these tiny turtles can sense both the angle and the intensity of the magnetic field, using this information to locate themselves in the vastness of the ocean. Salmon, too, navigate by magnetic cues. From the streams of their birth to the distant reaches of the sea and back again, they follow a path mapped not by sight or smell alone, but by the subtle inclination of magnetic lines. Researchers have implanted magnets in their bodies, altered the magnetic environment in laboratory tanks, and watched as the salmon's behavior shifted in response. Even mammals, long thought to be indifferent to magnetic fields, have shown surprising sensitivities. In the plains of Africa, mole rats build their tunnels in precise alignment with the magnetic field. In the forests of Europe, roe deer and cattle tend to align their bodies north-south while resting or grazing, a phenomenon first detected by analyzing thousands of satellite images. And so the tools and experiments grow ever more refined, the questions ever more subtle. From cages and ink pads to GPS satellites and quantum chemistry, the journey to decode nature's compass is a story of persistence and wonder. Each new method is a key, unlocking a door to hidden worlds of perception. As the white-throated sparrow awakens, the scientists finish their work, setting the bird gently in the grass. It pauses, feathers fluttering, then lifts into the air. Its path unknown, its purpose ancient. The transmitter on its back will whisper its secrets to a waiting satellite, tracing a line through sky and silence. Yet the greater mystery remains. What does the sparrow feel? What ancient map does it follow as it crosses forests and rivers, guided by forces we are only beginning to understand? In the hush that follows, the laboratory quiet, now except for the ticking of a clock, one senses the patience of discovery, the slow unfolding of knowledge. Beyond the windows, in the darkness before dawn, countless travelers stir, birds, turtles, salmon, and more, each carrying within them a compass more intricate than any we have yet devised. And as we peer further and deeper, seeking to join their journey in mind, if not in body, new questions await on the horizon, shimmering just beyond reach, calling us onward into the unknown. There is a kind of poetry in the world, a subtle chorus that hums beneath the surface of our awareness. It is not found in the printed stanza or the measured meter of spoken rhyme, but in the ancient correspondences that bind life to planet, animal to field, being to unseen force. This poetry exists in the stately drift of migrating birds, in the sinuous rivers navigated by salmon returning to their natal streams, in the silent, persistent journey of sea turtles across leagues of indifferent ocean. It is the language of the Earth's magnetic field, an endless, invisible thread that draws the living into patterns older than memory, older than words themselves. For most of human history, this connection was unspoken, unrecognized, woven so seamlessly into the fabric of existence that it passed without notice. We watched birds vanish into the horizon at summer's end and return with the thaw, marveling perhaps, but never questioning the deep, silent pull that guided them. We saw turtles emerge on faraway beaches to lay eggs where they themselves had hatched decades before, and wondered at the uncanny fidelity of their return. The magnetic field, that ghostly envelope enveloping our world, was a thing known only in the needle's trembling dance in the compass, a tool for navigation, a curiosity of physics. Its role as a guide for life, its intimate whisper in the ears of creatures, remained hidden, as subtle as the movement of the stars by day. And yet, as we have come to learn, the field is always there, an omnipresent presence, vast yet delicate, powerful yet gentle, shaping the destinies of creatures who never see its face. The molecules that sense it, cryptochrome, magnetite, and others, are scattered like tiny instruments within living cells, tuning their bearers to an unending symphony that plays around the globe. Some beings, like the European robin or the loggerhead turtle, have become virtuosos, reading the field with a sensitivity that would shame our best instruments. Others, perhaps, simply feel its touch, a nudge at the edge of awareness, a subtle compass that keeps them from ever truly being lost. What does it mean, this connection? What does it tell us, as humans, about the world we inhabit and the lives we so often overlook? To ponder this is to step into a kind of reverence, a humility before the vastness of what we do not yet know. The Earth's magnetic field is a phenomenon of physics, yes, a product of molten iron cycling deep within the planet's core, an interplay of rotation and convection that gives rise to lines of force stretching from pole to pole. But for the creatures who read it, who move through its invisible contours as surely as we walk along a forest path, it is more than mere physics. It is a map written in the air, a thread that links them not only to place, but to the history of life itself. Consider for a moment the very notion of an unseen connection. In an age defined by the visible and the tangible, where knowledge is so often equated with what can be measured or displayed, there is something profoundly moving about the idea that life depends upon what is hidden from the senses. The robin who feels the angle of magnetic inclination, the turtle who senses the faint difference in field intensity as she crosses the Atlantic. These are acts of faith in the unseen, acts of trust in a world that speaks in frequencies too subtle for human ears. Their journeys are testaments to the reliability of mystery, to the constancy of something that can neither be touched nor named, but only felt. It is tempting as humans to see ourselves as separate from these mysteries, set apart by our intellect, our technology, our restless pursuit of mastery. We build satellites to map the field, laboratories to probe the molecules that sense it, algorithms to simulate its fluctuations. We measure, record, analyze, and in so doing imagine that we have grasped the thing itself. Yet for all our ingenuity, we are in some ways less attuned than the humblest of birds. We cannot feel the field as they do. We cannot close our eyes and sense north, or find our way home by the faintest shift in magnetic flux. Our compasses are external, artifacts of mind and hand. Theirs are internal, written into the code of their being. But perhaps this very difference is a lesson, an invitation to humility and wonder. The field, after all, is not just a tool for navigation. It is a bond, a reminder that all life on Earth is shaped by forces greater than itself. The same field that guides the robin's migration also shields the planet from the solar wind, preserving the fragile atmosphere in which all breathe and grow. The field is a shield, a guide, a silent architect of possibility. To reflect upon this is to glimpse our place within the great web of causality, to recognize that our existence, too, is contingent upon the interplay of forces we cannot see. There is something deeply human in the yearning to understand these mysteries. Across cultures and centuries, we have sought to make sense of the unseen, to turn the unknown into story, myth, and science. The ancient Greeks imagined lodestones as magical stones imbued with the power to attract iron. The Chinese, millennia ago, fashioned the first compasses using magnetized needles to divine direction and harmony. In each case, the magnetic field was both a puzzle and a promise, a hint that the world was more connected, more mysterious than it appeared. Yet as our understanding has grown, so too has our sense of awe. The discovery that animals can sense the magnetic field does not diminish the mystery, it deepens it. For every answer, new questions arise. How precisely do molecules like cryptochrome interact with magnetic fields? Did the ability to sense magnetism evolve once or many times across the tree of life? Are there forms of magnetoreception we have not yet imagined, hidden in the nervous systems of creatures we have barely begun to study? Each discovery is a doorway, opening onto further wonder, further humility before the intricacy of nature's designs. And so we find ourselves, as night falls and the world grows quiet, contemplating the poetry of this unseen connection. The robin, navigating by the stars and the field, embodies a kind of grace that eludes easy explanation. The turtle, returning to a beach she has not seen in decades, carries within her the memory of fields long changed, lines of force that have drifted with the slow wander of the poles. Even bacteria, swimming towards or away from magnetic north in the mud of a distant pond, are part of this chorus, each responding to a signal broadcast from the heart of the planet. There is a kinship here, a sense in which all living things are participants in a shared story, written not in words, but in the language of fields and forces. To recognize this is to acknowledge that we too are creatures of the earth, shaped by its rhythms, bound by its rules. Our technologies may isolate us from the rawness of the world, but they cannot sever the fundamental ties that bind us to the rest of life. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the very atoms of our bodies, all have been shaped by the same processes, the same fields, the same deep time that shaped the salmon's journey or the bee's silent dance. To reflect on the magnetic sense is to reflect on the limits of our own perception. We see only a narrow band of the spectrum, hear only a sliver of the possible sounds, touch only what lies within arm's reach. The rest, the vastness of the electromagnetic world, the symphony of fields that vibrate through earth and sky, remains largely unknown, a presence felt more in its effects than its essence. The animals who sense the field offer us a glimpse of what it might mean to live in a world more richly textured, more deeply connected than we can imagine. What, then, might we learn from them? Perhaps, first, a lesson in humility, a reminder that our senses, remarkable as they are not the measure of all things. There are ways of knowing, ways of being, that lie beyond the reach of our instruments, our calculations, our theories. The robin does not need to know the equations of electromagnetism to find her way across continents. The turtle does not need to measure field strength in nanoteslas to return to her natal shore. Their knowledge is embodied, instinctive, born of millions of years of evolution and refinement. It is not less valid than ours, only different, a parallel form of wisdom shaped by the demands of life. Perhaps, too, there is a lesson in attunement, a call to pay deeper attention to the world around us, to listen for the subtle signals that guide and sustain. The magnetic field, after all, is only one of the many unseen threads that weave the tapestry of life. There are others, the chemical trails left by ants, the infrasonic rumbles that pass through elephant herds, the pressure waves that shape the schooling of fish. Each is a form of communication, a mode of connection, a reminder that the world is alive with signals we have barely begun to decode. To be human is, in some sense, to stand at the threshold of these mysteries, to be always reaching, always seeking to know more. Our science is a tool for opening windows into the unknown, for translating the poetry of the world into the language of understanding. But it is also, at its best, an act of reverence, a way of honoring the intricacy and elegance of the systems we study. When we gaze at the migration of birds, or marvel at the return of the salmon, we are not only witnessing the outcome of natural selection or the mechanics of field detection. We are glimpsing the profound unity of life, the web of connection that binds us all. There is a quiet joy in this awareness, a sense of belonging that arises from knowing that we too are part of the Earth's story. We may not sense the field as birds do, but we are shaped by it all the same. The same forces that guide the robin's flight also shape the weather, stir the oceans, and in ways subtle and profound, influence the currents of human life. We are, each of us, participants in a dance that began long before we were born and will continue long after we are gone. As you drift into sleep, let your thoughts linger on these connections. Imagine the world as it truly is, alive with signals, humming with hidden correspondence, every living thing attuned to the silent music of the planet. Somewhere, even now, a bird sets out on her journey, guided by a force she cannot see, trusting in the wisdom written into her being. Somewhere a turtle swims through moonlit waters, following lines of force that stretch from pole to pole. Somewhere a human child looks up at the night sky and wonders, what else lies hidden? What other secrets await discovery? What other poetry sings beneath the surface of things? Let these questions remain open, unanswered, an invitation to wonder. For in the end, the mystery is not a barrier to knowledge, but its wellspring, a source of inspiration, of humility, of awe. The unseen connection is not a riddle to be solved, but a story to be lived, a song to which all life belongs. And as the night deepens and the earth turns slowly beneath the stars, remember that you too are held within its field, part of its poetry, woven into the endless, invisible web of life. And so, our voyage through the silent compass of Earth's magnetic embrace gently drifts to a close, like a comet tail fading into the hush of space. As you let these whispered wonders settle softly in your mind, may your dreams carry you ever onward, and we'll meet again beneath the starlit tapestry for more dreamtime tales of the universe's quiet mysteries.